Yeah, right. We should hear the. Is it not recording? No? Okay. Okay, welcome. So today I am very, what's the word? Humbled? Privileged? Very happy to introduce you to my good friend and mentor and just all around very inspiring and inspirational dude, because you're the dude, Chris Jones. Chris is the author of, check. This one is the Guerilla Filmmaker Hollywood Handbook, but there's a whole series of them, including this baby one. Do you remember that one?
I do.
And also multi-award winning independent filmmaker and the director of the London Screenwriters Festival, who also released this little dude right there, the Screenwriters Pocketbook. And this, I'm just showing this as a visual aid, but really I like this because it's kind of exactly in your ethos of putting 100 years of knowledge in a little pocketbook.
Yeah.
Size, like nuggets. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for beaming up here all the way from, where are you again?
I'm in the Cotswolds currently. Yes. Well, thank you for having me. I've been given a brief by Maureen to talk about independent filmmaking today and tomorrow, I guess, and I mean that not quite literally, although actually quite literally. So in both senses of it. I've also just come off the back of running the London Screenwriters Festival, which is a massive international conference for screenwriters. And as an organization, the Screenwriters Festival is built on the concept of let's put 1,000 people in a room together for 3 days, which is clearly about the worst business model imaginable for COVID generations. So the Screenwriters Festival kind of went into catastrophe mode 18 months ago. And that gave me the opportunity to observe up close and personal, not only my own journey, but the journey of other creative people as we live through what I can now very clearly see is the very first wave of the digital revolution. So to give you some context, I've been training filmmakers for 15, 20 years now, having made a bunch of feature films, Oscar shortlisted film, but probably most importantly, through the Guerilla Filmmakers Handbooks, I ended up interviewing literally hundreds of other filmmakers and film experts, everybody from literally the Barclays bank manager in Soho Square that runs the accounts for big productions, all the way through to someone who does the cooking on low budget films. And, you know, how to do that. How do you deliver food to 12 people over a 22-day period on a budget of nothing? Now, how do you do that? So I've got this extraordinary kind of oversight over the whole process, and also have done it myself multiple times and got the battle wounds to show it. And I started training filmmakers 15 years ago because I discovered that not only was I quite good at conveying concepts and ideas and inspiring people to take action, but I also enjoyed it. And that was a sweet spot for me. So that's why I've continued to do this. And one of the things I always began with, even 15 years ago, was that we were in the digital revolution. And I think the very, very clear first steps from a filmmaking perspective about the digital revolution was the evolution of the Canon 5D, large sensor camera with a good lens. You could suddenly shoot a film on a camera that cost £2,000, a movie that kind of approximated what a movie in the cinema looked like. It wasn't really, but this was 2008. The reality is now you can buy a camera that feature films are shot on for £5,000. You can stick a piece of glass on it for £7,000. You can buy everything you need, literally everything you need, for under £10,000. Now, I get £10,000 is a big number, but we'll come back to that. So technologically, we are there. The other thing that happened is Vimeo up the game with YouTube. They began streaming HD, and of course now, you can make a film today, you can edit it this afternoon, you can put it online, and somebody in Australia can watch it in HD with surround sound. It's possible, and it's not even unusual. I mean, there will be people who do that today. I mean, quite literally. And it won't be one or two people, it will be in the tens of thousands of people who do that today around the globe. So this is common now. So the strange thing that has happened over the last 2 years, and I do think it's worth talking about, is when you're inside a technological revolution, so the industrial revolution of 150 years ago, whatever. When you're living inside that, you don't go, "Oh, look, I'm living inside the industrial revolution." It's just how life is, and I think that's how it is now. We just perceive life to be life, but in years to come, they'll look back at the period from, say, 1995 to, I don't know, 2030, let's just say, as the first major wave of the digital revolution. But we're inside a massive one right now. And who knew? It was supposed to look like Blade Runner, but it ended up looking like this, Zoom. This is part of the digital revolution. We no longer need to go and see people. In fact, it's no longer expected that let's jump on Zoom. This thing here, a phone, like if my phone rings now, I'm like, who the fuck's calling me? Like, what is this strange thing? A telephone call. Like, it doesn't happen. That's actually quite massive. So we've made a massive leap in technology over the last 2 years. So the industry has pivoted massively. Now, of course, physical production is fairly similar to how it used to be, but the way things get put together is very, very different. And it is really worth leaning into all of this. There's what I've discovered training filmmakers is there's a huge amount of, I wish it was like it used to be yesterday, last year. And I understand that, because I wish that too. If I could go back in time and, the age old adage of, would you go back in time and assassinate Hitler? Well, sometimes in my darker moments, I'm like, should I go back in time and assassinate Zuckerberg? Because I could really do without Facebook in my life. But that's ridiculous, of course. But we can't do that. So we have to lean into the technological evolution revolution that we are inside. And the upshot is, and this is what I really want to talk about, is I think every one of us in this conversation, in this room right now, can make an incredibly credible, world-class commercial feature film for £50,000 or less. Now, you can take that number right down to, £1,500, let's say. I mean, look, whatever, pull a number out your ass, you can do it for that. There will just be compromises, and you need to choose your compromises and understand that the compromises will come back to haunt you when you get into sales and distribution. And if you want to make a film and put it on YouTube and that's it, that's the whole deal, go for it, do it. Do whatever you want, really. And there's no reason why you shouldn't. But if you have aspirations that you want your film to do what Maureen interviewed the guys from the Ouija's, getting it on Amazon, and like not just on Amazon Prime where you upload it yourself and monetize to 1p every 100 hours, but actually do it properly and become a hit show, then you have to do it properly. And that means there are certain things you cannot compromise on. The good news is that almost everything you can do yourself. There just comes a point where you have to say, well, I can't direct the film and make lunch. So how do you square that circle? So the question is, first of all, what do you want to make? How do you want to make it? What size crew do you need? How many days should you shoot? The question of what format should we shoot is, we can talk about that briefly, but it's kind of redundant because everything is brilliant now. How should you approach post-production? How should you approach the marketplace and selling it? And what pitfalls should you consciously avoid? And And should you even do it in the first place? Because there is a whole argument, and it's a very, very strong argument. It's like, why bother making an independent feature film when you can make a 12-minute piece of nonsense for YouTube today, upload it, and have 2 million views by next week and have earned an income? I mean, that's filmmaking. Let's not diminish that. It's not what I want to do, not what I choose to do, but it is no less valid. And I, for the first time in certainly in my career, you actually have the capability and possibility of making money online without any kind of investor or anything really from simply being a filmmaker. You can do it. Now, whether you want to be Quentin Tarantino or not is a whole other conversation, but you can do it. My son watches, he's 7 years old, 6 years old. He's currently watching the Dangy Brothers, which is a bunch of kids in a house in California somewhere who do stupid things. And they make these videos and they're quite slick. They're ridiculous and low tech and they're quite slick, but they have like 30 million views. They are making lots of money.
Do you know what?
So,
Can I just pause you there for a second on
yep.
the views, Chris? Because I think to give us a sense of understanding, 13 million views, like from what I understand, BBC Scotland doesn't come anywhere near those views. So you have the internet where you can have access to a global audience. You can go into the millions of views, and then I think it's interesting to see how do you monetize that even? Do you have an idea of that? Because, someone like me, I would love to be on BBC Scotland. But at the same time, from talking to people, I understand what's my primary goal. Is it to reach my audience?
Yeah.
Or is it the credit that, being endorsed by a broadcaster does?
So what you're doing, what you're really doing is you're falling kind of into the trap that I started in, which is like you're wishing it was the way it was yesterday. Like a 17-year-old kid coming into the film industry does not care about BBC Scotland. They're like, a 17-year-old kid will say, what is BBC Scotland? Is that like on YouTube? What is it? They won't even know. It's so completely divorced from their reality. And that 17-year-old kid will be a 27-year-old professional in 10 years' time, and they will define the industry. When BBC Scotland will be...
So the platform, you mean?
Well, it's more a broad psychological understanding that, I just watched a video this morning that scared the life out of me about how I need to know more about the blockchain. And I'm like, we've all heard of it, and we all go, yeah, that's just for internet nerds. But I'm thoroughly convinced that the blockchain is going to transform everything like the internet did 20 years ago. Like, when you think about it, how is it possible that I didn't buy the domains for all the things that I'm doing? Like, I remember somebody saying to me back in 1998, you should buy the domain for, I've forgotten what it was. I was like, yeah, but I'll do that in a few years' time. And if I'd done that, I could sell that domain for £25,000 now. Like, why didn't we do all of that? And it's because we often look backwards too much instead of forwards. The gold is in the hills. It's like, sure, you can sell shovels to the gold miners and you may become rich selling the shovels, but you have to go to the hills to find the gold. So, yeah, I mean, this is why, I began the conversation saying, I think we've just passed the first wave of the digital revolution. There's going to be many waves, and it's not all good. If you look at the Industrial Revolution, what did it do? It took people who lived around the country, who were farmers, and they brought them all into the city to have a better life. And it was all great until, of course, everybody got disease, became alcoholics, got mangled in cotton-making machines. It wasn't great. And that's about to happen all over again, but in a digital sense. And you can see it already. The world is fracturing. You only have to look at COVID and Brexit, and we're in this very strange place where people don't understand the world that we're living in. So I don't want to get sucked into that because it is fundamentally a distraction. Ultimately, you need to make a choice, which is what kind of artist do you want to be?
Right.
And it's like, if you want to make independent feature films, which is what I want to do, then that's what you choose. If you want to make YouTube videos, then that's what you choose. But what you can't do is say, make an independent feature film and then say, but why doesn't it work on YouTube? Because that's just like saying, why can't I be a pub band busking. I don't know. I'm making bad analogies. It's just the wrong product for the wrong platform and format. So it is a risk, but you have to do what you're called to do, and not really what is the smarter choice. I argue the younger people are called to do it because they don't know what independent film is, because they've not been exposed to it, and frankly, it's boring. It's most. I watch my little boy again. He's 6 years old. Like, put him in front of Star Wars, and he's like, "Daddy, this is boring." I'm like, "Okay, that is heresy for a start off, but how can you possibly say?" But then it is to him, who's used to the Dangy brothers, who edit every half second.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's a philosophical choice. Let's assume you've made that choice. Let's assume that you're going down the road of independent filmmaking in all its variants, whether that's a short film, a feature film, a high quality webisodic series. It's about longer format storytelling with drama and characters and narrative. And I would say, I don't want to say this, but I don't know how else to say it, but like traditional cinematography, traditional sound and music, we all know what that is. And if you spend any time on social media where, you can see like somebody's filming on their phone and it's all happening, and whatever happens, that feels very different to when somebody uploads a clip from a movie and you go, "Oh, look, there's angles, like there's editing, there's lighting," and you have a very, very different emotional response to it. So let's assume that's what we're doing. How do we approach that, and how do we make that work for us without consuming us completely? And I think the first thing to do is to know that that is not going to be a quick process. Is let's say everyone in here along with me said, "Let's make an independent feature film. We're going to do this. We're going to come up with an idea now." So from the moment we've chosen to do it to the moment that we deliver it to the marketplace and see it to its logical end, and there is no logical end. It's like children, like they never leave really, but there is a point where they leave home and you're like, okay, they'll come back. But there's a long tail and you have to acknowledge that exists. But you're looking at something like a 3 to 5 year process there. 3 would be remarkably quick, more like 5 year process. And you may do one for 5 years and then nudge another one. In year 2 you start another one, so you've got things moving at the same time. You don't have to completely complete one before you can start the next. Because there's, let's say, a year of development and fundraising and putting everything into place and getting into pre-production, 10 days of shooting or 20 days of shooting, whatever it is, 6 months of post-production, 6 months of sales beginning, and then another 3 or 4 years of sales, and distribution. And so, you have to be covered for all that. And, a year 5, you really don't want to be in a situation where someone in South Korea is saying, we need the subtitles file, please. And you're like, where the hell is that? Most people don't know where any file is on their computer that they saved 30 seconds ago, let alone a complex series of digital files, that was saved 5 years ago on somebody's hard drive under a bed in Germany. So, there's a whole thing there, which we won't have time to get into today, but be aware that there is a digital management issue after post-production ends, that somebody has to be responsible. Like for the Ouija's, when Amazon says, we need a new version of your edit for whatever reason, those guys can't say, I'm really sorry, we don't know where the footage is. And as impossible as that sounds, I can guarantee that happens more often than you would like to think. Okay, so let's dial it back. We've decided to make this film. What are we going to do? Well, first of all, I would suggest that most of us can raise way more money than we think we can. And the reason we don't think we can is we're not used to doing it. But everyone in this room can raise £5,000, literally everybody. You might not think you can, but I promise you can. And you can probably raise 50 if you're prepared to commit. And there's a phrase that Maureen introduced me to a long time ago, which is making the distinction between being attached and committed. Because most people are attached to an idea and a few people are committed. And when you meet a committed person, it is like you're talking to an entirely different species. And people can smell that 1,000 miles away. We want to be around committed people. The reason we watch sports, the reason why we watch the Olympics is because those people are committed. They're committed to excellence, to being the best that they can be. And we know that, and we aspire to be that while we sit on the sofa and are not that. So you're selling something that people aren't prepared to do, which is be outstanding, amazing, risk-taking, dynamic, all of those things. People want to be that. And with crowdfunding, give us a fiver, give us a tenner, that will happen. And then you'll unexpectedly find an investor who'll say, I really like what you're doing. Listen, I was going to buy a yacht, but here's, 30 grand instead. Go make your film. I want to be an executive producer. I cannot tell you how many times that's happened to me, where you just go, I'm going to do this thing, and people can smell it, and suddenly out of nowhere, the money appears. So look, there isn't a magic pot at the end of the rainbow called here's buried the money. It doesn't exist, but I can tell you that magnetically it is attracted to you when you commit. And no, it's not going to happen. You don't commit and then tomorrow the money shows up. You have to commit for like a decade. And at some point in that decade, it will show up. And that's the distinction between being attached and committed. It's like if you're committed, a decade is just 10 years of like stuff, of actually doing stuff you enjoy and you love and you're passionate about. And when you hit that rhythm of being completely committed at a very, very high level, you'd be amazed at what you can achieve in a single day, let alone a week, a month, and a year, particularly if you hook up with somebody who has the same committed attitude and the same vision, and you have complementary skills. Then really the magic starts to really, really show up for you. So let's assume you've got all of that mindset and you're committed to raising some money, whatever it is, whether it's £1,000, 10,000, 50. You then need to get your kit. You need to let's take a step back. You need to have a project that you can make for that kind of money. Now, I've got a good friend, Simon Cox, who made a film it was originally called Kaleidoscope Man. It morphed into Invasion Planet Earth. He always loved Star Wars, so he decided he was going to make a film about the invasion of planet Earth. It only took him 20 years to make, and he did make it. I mean, hats off to him. He pretty much made it in his garage, and by shooting every 2 days and then taking 3 months off, 2 days and 3 months off. His daughters are in it 3 times, playing 3 different characters, because they started off at age like 2 or 3, then 5 and 6, and then 10 and 11. And so they got to play different characters because they're different ages, different heights, different, they look different. That's how long it took him. So we don't want to do that. We don't want to make a film about the invasion of planet Earth. What we want to do is look at the successful micro-budget films, and it usually is high concept in a contained, so there's 2 containments. There's a contained space, that's a physical geographic location. There's a small group of characters, ideally, let's say 3 principals and 2 or 3 secondary characters. And then it's usually confined in time as well. And the reason for that is because it avoids costume changes. So if you think about Die Hard is told over 1 day. Literally, Bruce Willis's costume, yes, it does change because it gets darker as, his vest gets dirtier and dirtier. But Gandhi, for instance, the epic from 35 years ago, takes place over 50 years. And we visit him in various days throughout that time period. So, you've got location changes, you've got costume changes. So you want to compress it down into a single time unit, if possible. Now, that could be a week, it could be a day. And look, none of this is prescriptive. It's like you can't do the other things. It's just if you do the other things, you start leaning towards Simon Cox in his garage, taking 20 years to make his film. And you don't really want to be that person. You want to make You want to make a film that whoever you want to work with next sees it and goes, that's really cool. What else have you got? And then you pull out the next script. So if you want to think about it in career development, you spend the next 3 to 5 years working on your 10-year career plan, deciding where you want to be in a decade, and then you make an independent film that is a logical stepping stone to where that is. So that when people in 5 years' time or 3 years' time say, I really love your independent film, we're an agent looking for representation. We're a studio looking for our next hit. What else have you got? Who are you really? You can answer those questions credibly, enthusiastically, and passionately, so that people go, wow, this person's really amazing. Let's hire them, or let's keep an eye on them. So it's all about promise. Your first independent film is really a promise. And the promise is, give me some real money and I will do something amazing. Now, again, this is a model and a pathway. There are infinite pathways. You look at Mount Everest, there's 1,000 ways to get to the top if you really want to. Including a helicopter that drops you at the top if you want to. And there will be people you will see who do get the helicopter ride to the top, and it will be really annoying. And that's usually because they are the daughter or son of somebody famous. They've got personal wealth, they're connected, they're good looking. Like, we can talk about privileges and how unjust and unfair that is. Meanwhile, you could also just get on with ignoring that and getting on with actually taking responsibility for the opportunities that you've been given, which are amazing. You are alive. That's number one. You are not dying of starvation, because if you were, you wouldn't be on this Zoom call with me. That's not to say we're not experiencing hardships, but that's just called being alive. So let's use what we've got to do something amazing with our lives, and put something out into the world. So it's about the promise. So you're making this film about the promise. You're going to raise anywhere between £1,000, £50,000 on crowdfunding and hustle your way through it. And if you're passionate about the story, if you're passionate about the project, that will land you on TV, that will land you on local radio, that will attract other people who have the same passion, and you will get it made. And so how do you spend, let's say £25,000? I'm going to do some rough maths now. I've not thought about this, but if I had £25,000 to make an independent feature film, we'd probably shoot for something like 14 days with 1 day off in the middle. And I would try and make it like 10 of those days would be in one location. Now that might be multiple story locations, but one physical geographic location, so that you could be shooting over this way and it's one thing, you could shoot that way and it's something else. I mean, you could, there's no reason why you couldn't do the inside of a spaceship. I mean, if you can build a set that, but then you kind of containing your entire crew, your entire story inside a tin can, and that can be done and has been done. Buried as a guy in a coffin, the whole film, a guy in a coffin. It can be done. Dark Star, John Carpenter's Dark Star, which is the film when I began my career, was the seminal one of like, it's just so ridiculous but brilliant at the same time. If you've not seen Dark Star, you should watch it, if only as an exercise. So you want that contained story in a contained location, and you want to ideally not to have to pay for that. And then make sure it's got parking, make sure it's not on a flight path or near a motorway, because you've got to have good sound. And then your crew and your cast, I mean, I would say you want to probably cast locally, and social media is the best way to do that, because you don't want to put anybody up in a hotel, which you've got to make sure literally every penny you spend is a penny that is not on the screen, and nobody will care about what you spent. They'll only care about what your film looks like. No, you cannot pull the film's not that good, but the catering was great. Like, nobody cares. Of course they don't. So it's a constant battle to compromise. Like it is like going to war in the trenches with people in pink combat gear. That's probably very, very unpolitically correct to say today, but it's kind of true. It's like creative people tend to be, I mean, this, some people are very more kind of like, it's almost like boot camp military. You need that kind of mentality because you're going to work really long hours. Some people love that and really lean into it. Other people don't. And you want to move away from those people. I've always, whenever I've done anything, there is usually one or two people I get to wherever we need to be and they're already there. And then at the end of the day, everyone's left and I'm getting in my car or leaving and they're emptying the bins. And you're like, this person's going to be a success. And lo and behold, I can track those people over time and they are. Those are the successful people. First in, last out, because they're completely committed to this particular thing that they have committed themselves to, as opposed to, I'll give you a good example. We just run a festival online and we had two interns, and one of them would send me a message saying, I might get this wrong actually because they're very similar messages, saying, is there anything you need me for or can I leave? I can't remember. Basically, one of them was saying, I'd like to leave. And the other one was saying, I've got some capacity, but if you don't need anything doing, I'll leave. So it was kind of like a very slight distinction between the two. But lo and behold, one of them is successful and is still with us and the other one's gone. And you want to be first in, last out at every opportunity. The opportunity that you are given, the opportunity that you create is not a financial one. It's an opportunity to grow, make contacts, learn your craft, get really, really good. The opportunity comes in 10 years' time when you are really good. And, I've got a close friend, Eddie Hamilton, who's, he edited the third feature film that I made, and it was his first film. And, we paid him virtually nothing and abused him for almost an entire year in post-production and put him through the ringer. He edited a short film that I made years ago, and he's currently now editing the next 3 Mission Impossible films. He's very modest, but he is absolutely the third corner of the triangle between Chris McQuarrie, Tom Cruise, and Eddie Hamilton. That's where he's at now. And he's at that point because he's so committed to what he wants to do and so passionate and so, I mean, you'd have to meet him to understand it. It's difficult to describe. And yet, whenever I meet him and he talks to me, he makes me feel like I am smarter and more brilliant than he is. He has this incredible knack of authentically making me feel amazing. And authentically, not like blowing smoke at my ass, but actually like he can focus on what I'm good at and why I'm doing it and encourage that and bring really good ideas to every single question, and ask really good questions. And that's because he spent 10 years in the trenches learning how to be brilliant. And then he got his break. And he got his break on a Guy Ritchie film, which he was fired from. And then he got another break on another film, which he was fired from, and that was Kick-Ass, and he got rehired after Pietro Scalia, who won the Oscar for JFK, came in and did a 4-week block and then said to Matthew Vaughn, you'd be insane not to rehire Eddie because he's the real deal. So, and why would an Oscar winner make a strong recommendation on an unknown editor? Because Eddie's that good. And because Eddie has the relationship then to leverage that. But you don't get that in year one on your low budget film. You just don't. So this is a long-term commitment. So let's go back. We've established who we need to be in order to be amazing and successful. And so you got your £25,000, 14-day shoot, 13-day shoot with 1 day off in the middle. You need a script that is self-contained. And if your script is 96 pages, then what you want to do is pare that down to 83. And I know people will say, particularly screenwriters, it can't be done. I guarantee it can. Not only that, I can guarantee right now I can cut your first page in half, literally your first page. So that's all experience. And what will happen is if you don't make the cuts on the page, you will make the cuts on set. And then you won't get to choose what gets cut because you don't have enough resources to shoot your film. There will be compromises. So you want to choose your compromises before you even get there so that you make them when you're not exhausted and have an actor screaming at you because they haven't eaten for 5 hours. So you get yourself in the best possible way, the shortest possible script, the tightest possible script, a good concept in a limited location, a great title, a clear genre, like it knows what it is. You know what you were making. And all of these are aspirations. Look, you're going to drop the ball on many of these things, and that's okay. Like, you want to see my first film, go ahead and watch it. It is terrible. It is a terrible, terrible movie. That was my baptism of fire. You have to go through that. You have to go, Chris is wrong, he's an asshole. And then get to the end and go, I've learned some things now. You just have to do that. You have to find your own path, your own way through it. I'm just offering some hard-won experiences. Take what you want, but above all things, go do it and learn your own path. So all of the choices you make before you shoot the film will come back to haunt you after you shoot the film. How big should your crew be on a £25,000 budget? Assuming everyone's staying locally, like they live locally, well, you will. This is how I would do it. Now, Maureen talked about self-shooting. Yes, there are people who can do that. I don't like to do that because if I'm focusing on the camera, I'm not focusing on the actors and the script. And I don't think that's a good use of my time. So I would have a DP. We made a short film a few years ago. It was a commercial film where everybody got paid. I mean, everybody got paid rate. And we made it, I upscaled it to feature length, and it basically came in at like £125,000 if we made the same film, but just made it 90 minutes long and paid everybody full rates. Like, that's crazy, £125,000. So using that as a kind of model, and assuming you get most people to work either for free or for peanuts, which you should be able to, like, you don't have the budget to pay people properly. If people are saying they want to be paid properly, you just have to go find somebody else. What you're looking for is somebody who wants the opportunity to make lots of mistakes at your expense, and they will. And that's just the price you have to pay for not paying people. You get people who are inexperienced and who will make mistakes. If you don't want that, then you have to raise all the money and pay people. So you can't be angry at people who make cock-ups because they're going to make them, including you. We all think we're brilliant and we know what we're doing until it's, 11 o'clock at night and you haven't slept for 3 days and you start making silly mistakes because of exhaustion. So I would have some kind of assistant. I wouldn't have an assistant director. I don't personally need that. I'm able to stand on set and call the shots and be prepared for what's coming next. I think you need to have complete oversight over the whole production. Like, what you're shooting in an hour, this afternoon, tonight, next week. You know everything. You're going to need a producer who is going to be handling all the things that need to happen behind the scenes, and they are probably going to need an assistant as well, probably called a production manager. So that's like the core management team of getting what you need to get done. Camera team, I would say, needs to be 2 people, a camera operator, a DP, who handles the camera with a focus puller / assistant / clapper loader / DIT. They'll take care of the camera department. Yes, they need 6 people, but you don't have budget, so you're going to do it with 2. Sound, you can probably do it with 1 person. They will complain, and they'd be right to complain, but you don't have the budget. So 1 person, sound person, is always a difficult person to get hold of. Art department, you'll probably need 2 people to make sure that what is in front of the camera looks terrific, so that whatever the camera the DP is lighting looks great. You're going to need someone in costume and makeup, possibly just one costume designer plus an assistant. If there's lots of costume changes, then yes, you really will. But you do need somebody responsible for it. You can't just allow the actors to go, well, I think I look okay. And I'm sure continuity is okay. And you're going to probably need someone to do makeup. Now, you probably want to go makeup light. Like, you don't want a lot of makeup. There'll be special makeup, like, if someone's got a bruise or they need a particular appearance, then you might need to do that. But actors in particular can get a little bit, there are two kinds. There'll be those who go, I don't care about makeup, it's fine. Those are the people who've done lots of low budget stuff and want to move quickly. And then there'll be the others who are used to being treated a certain way, and they like the ritual of sitting in a chair and having somebody fuss over them and make them look fabulous. So you may, I would choose to do makeup traditionally properly for the majority, but I would always urge the makeup artist, like, if the actor is okay with going with minimal makeup, then let's just do that. So you're going to need that. You're going to need someone who's going to look after locations and movement between locations, if there are lots of locations. If there aren't, then maybe you don't need that. Obviously, things like parking on site and loos and a place to feed people, rain cover if you're outside. You want to avoid shooting at night if possible, because you can only shoot half speed because it's dark. You want to avoid rain, snow, children, animals, all of that stuff for all the obvious reasons. You also need to think about catering. So you produce, theoretically, your producer and production manager coordinator may be able to help on that. But I would say that may be a false economy. You might want to have one other person whose job it is to just feed everybody. And so, you're looking at a crew of 10 or 12 people. And some of the actors may be so gung-ho that they get involved as well. And that's amazing if you can have that experience. But my experience is the majority of them, oh no, I'm an actor, I don't do that. And that's okay, because the one thing, psychologically, the thing that I think messes a lot of independent filmmakers up is you're on set, it's 11 o'clock at night, and everybody's exhausted, nobody's eaten, and your lead actor is being cranky because they don't like on my first film, there was this guy, he's a very good looking guy, and he got really cranky with me late at one night. And I just said, look, what's the problem, man? It's like, we just want to get this shot. And he said, you're always shooting me from this side, and my nose doesn't look as good from this side. Why are you always shooting my nose from this side? And to me, I was like, that's just bonkers. Like, I'm sorry, but I haven't noticed your nose. But I couldn't say that, obviously. So I just said, okay, look, let's change the lighting. We'll shoot you from the other side so your nose looks great. But the thing is, in order to do the job of being an actor, it requires an extraordinarily different skill set to being able to pick up a camera and move it around. And, most film people, I would say, are like, if you were building a house, you've got your bricklayers, you've got your interior designers, you can see all the analogies there, but those are not the people who wander around and sell the house to a prospective buyer. Those people are very different, and they're not going to pick up bricks and start building a house. So it's a completely different creature, is an actor, and it's very easy to kind of like get annoyed, particularly when everyone's rapping late at night and it's raining, and the actor is sat in the car looking at their phone, and everybody else is stood out in the rain coiling up cables. And you're like, why do they get to do that? Well, because they're the actors, and they are different, and you must afford them that distinction, because you don't want your actors to start thinking like crew, because then they'll stop being actors. And the only thing that exists in your film at the very end is the actors and what it looks like. So we don't care about coiling the cable at 11 o'clock at night in the rain. We only care about the end product. We only care about the movie. So you get through your shoot, it's amazing. You get through post-production. I could go on about post-production for another 3 hours. But you edit your film, it's not very good. You re-edit your film, it's not very good. You go back and do some reshoots, which is why you don't sleep with your lead actors and fall out with them. You want them to come back. You do some more shooting, some more screenwriting. You start plugging holes. You figure out what isn't working, and don't panic about this. All films go through this, and it'll take you about probably 6 months to get through to what you would like to think of being a kind of final cut. At which point you go on holiday, you come back, and your film is too long, so you cut it down again. If your film is 95 minutes long, it's too long. It needs to be 90, ideally 90, 88 to 90 minutes for the commercial marketplace. And I can guarantee you, whatever you've done, it is too long. It's just too long because you don't have the resources to compete with Michael Bay. You know, that's the pace of what most people's filmmaking experience is like. So refine, 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 refine. Filmmaking and screenwriting is the art of saying the most with the least. So you get through to the end, you then have to go through color grading and sound mixing, which again, I could go on about for hours, but you want to do the very best job you can possibly do, all with an eye now onto delivery and sales and distribution. Delivery is the point where you give your movie to whoever's going to buy it. So you need to keep your eye on all the assets, like where are the original camera rushes, where is the edit, where is the sound, all of these digital assets. And it's so easy to let something slip. And then 6 months down the line, you can't deliver your film because most people who haven't been through the process think delivering your film is like you just give them a copy of your film. To make delivery on a feature film, you will need to give the sales agents, distributors, and broadcasters somewhere in the region of about 75 different things, including multiple edits, including versions, including subtitle files, legal contracts. I mean, to make delivery on a feature film, if you pay a company to handle delivery, the fee is usually somewhere in the region of £45,000. That's for just a person to spend 3 months putting together the delivery package. So on £1 million film, they would have, £35,000 in the budget to make delivery. You don't have that, so you have to make delivery, which means there's a whole step there that you have to make sure you don't mess up on. It isn't terrifying, but you have to like a spreadsheet. You have to be that person. You can't be creative. You need someone who's very anal at this point and technologically mindful to understand, like, what is the distinction between 4K and 2K and 10-bit and 12-bit and 5.1 surround or stereo mixes and all of that stuff. So like this is right now we're about 2 years in, right? So we've gone from like idea like 40 minutes ago and said, let's make this film. It's now 2 years later, including, births, divorces, weddings, deaths, all of the things that are part of life. I have friends who've made feature films with actors who have died, before the premiere. Like it happens. So it's a long, long process. So you go through post-production and delivery, and then you enter sales and distribution. Now, a lot of people will tell you that film sales and distribution doesn't exist in the way that it did, and they're not necessarily wrong. And harking back to where I began about the digital revolution, things are changing and probably for the better. But some principles still remain. And the first fundamental principle is, does anybody want to watch your film? Like, all you need to do is audit your own experience tonight on Netflix. Just watch how quickly you will skip over anything and ask yourself, why am I skipping over it? And why am I hesitating and pausing to see a trailer or look at something more? Now, some of it is taste. Some of it is history. Like maybe you like Star Trek and therefore you just love the new Star Trek series. You're going to watch it the day it comes out. Maybe that's who you are. But for the majority of us, we have our tastes, we have our things we really like. And then there's that area of like, what's that? Oh, that's kind of interesting. Ask yourself, why are you triggered to take action? And when I say action, what I mean is click play. And then why are you triggered to stay? So here's what I think. First of all, you're not going to get Tom Cruise. So you can't have Tom Cruise on the poster. So that's all, you're already down like an enormous way. You need to be clear about what the experience will be like. So what is your film? It's a science fiction film. It's a thriller. It's a drama. Like, it's not a drama comedy. That doesn't exist. It's a comedy. If it's a funny film, it's a comedy. That's it. That's the end of it. People aren't good. So, do you know, I fancy a drama comedy tonight. Nobody does that. They go, I want to see something funny. So be funny. So know the genres, the broad genres. I mean, it's crazy. Netflix changes the genres. Right now, there's a genre called LGBTQ+. Like, that's an entire genre of filmmaking because that's currently in the zeitgeist. So people are clicking on that. Black Lives Matter is another one. It's in the zeitgeist. So that's become a genre. Whereas, you know, like comedy horror isn't a genre. Like Shaun of the Dead appears in both comedy and horror. So it's appearing in both of those categories. So you need to know which category you're going to fit into, and then you craft your sales artwork according to that, and your title and your tagline. Like, I can't begin to tell you how important the title is. Like, it's just so vital. People will make a decision. What is it? It's that. Oh, who's in it? Nobody. Oh, let me look at the poster. Okay, next. And that's your movie gone for all time. They've made a decision. Now that's the consumer. When it gets to the salespeople, it is different. So that how it traditionally works is you have an agent who then attempts to sell your film into all of the territories around the world, and then they put it onto whichever platform they want to. Netflix is a disruptor in so much as Netflix came into the market saying, we'll just take the whole world. Like, I don't know whether you remember that film with Natalie Portman, Annihilation. I've forgotten which studio made it, but they got into post-production and went, this is really grim. Like, we're not going to see our money back on this. So they sold it to Netflix for just more than what it cost to make, and they got to walk away from it. And Netflix got a movie that, you know, did what Netflix wanted it to do. So the Netflix model, the Amazon model, is a massive disruptor. And you can get on the Amazon platform like the Ouija's did. It's more difficult to get into Netflix without actually giving them all rights. But if Netflix take it, you're in an amazing place because it platforms you and your work, and they will also pay you really, really well. So again, I could talk for hours and hours about sales and distribution, but the fundamentals remain. Does anybody want to watch your film? Like, what single thing is it that people go, huh, and causes them to click? If you don't have it, you're in trouble. And, you know, I would say, just going back to concept now, audacity is the big one. It's like, be outrageous and audacious and tell the film that nobody would ever allow you to tell. Like, pick a genre and then go, okay, what is the most outrageous thing I could do in that genre? What can I make that the BBC would never fund, ever? That's what you make. Now, funnily enough, I watched a documentary last night. It's on Netflix. Many of you have seen it, The Movies That Made Us. And you should watch. I watched the one Friday the 13th. I don't know whether you've seen Friday the 13th. I saw it in the cinema as a kid, terrified the life out of me. Watch the documentary on how they made Friday the 13th. It is astonishing. The guy came up with the title and raised the money on the title, and they went into production without a script. They just said, well, we just need a body count. They had a simple thing like hot teenagers who have sex get killed, and they get killed in very bloody ways. That's it. That's the whole thing. And it made like 130 million at the box office and cost $500,000. Now, we can't do that today, but that was the disruptor of that time. That was the story that 20th Century Fox couldn't tell. They couldn't make a film with that level of gore because the shareholders wouldn't allow it. So what can we make that gets people to really sit up? I mean, you know, look, you guys are all up in Glasgow, or some of you are at least. the first thing I know, I've been to Glasgow, I've been to Edinburgh, particularly Glasgow, is outright. You guys can say the word fucking cunt so often. Like, so make a drama with that. I mean, like, make it a marketing virtue. We say fuck and cunt in this film more than any other movie ever in all time. And people will go, really? Got to see that. What's that like? Now, if you then deliver that with panache, that's unique. And people go, wow, have you heard about this Glaswegian film? It's called F star star K F star. You know, it's like you got the whole title is like a load of stars. Like you can't even print the title. That's unique. Like people, wow, and they don't even care what it's about then, because you've got this unique hook. So what is it that you can do that makes people go, that's extraordinary? Because you are up against a cat on a skateboard at any given moment. I mean, in this conversation right now, I am literally up against people on their phones. And I don't know, everyone's blacked out here, but the majority of people, I don't know whether in the middle, yeah, this guy's a bit boring. Let me check my phone. That's the world we live in. We want to keep the focus. We want to keep people's attention. Attention is the currency of 2021. How can you get people's attention? How can you keep people's attention? That's how you will get hired to do the next job where you're paid to do it. Now, that may well be paid to direct an episode of Doctors on daytime television, which is fantastic, because Doctors will lead to Holby City, which will lead to EastEnders, which will lead to single camera drama, which will, if you're smart and clever, that will be David Yates directing Harry Potter. If that's where you want to go, you might not want to go there, but that's how it works. So that's what I would do if I were you in 2021, 2022. Make something outrageous that people go, oh, I've got to see this film. Like, it is so bonkers right out the gate. And then, you know, you slip in your message, you slip in your hardcore, like, dramatic content where people go, I wasn't expecting that bit in the middle. That really hit me hard. Like, wasn't expecting that. Contradict yourself. You know, human beings love contradictions. We like yin and yang. We like big and small, sweet and sour. It's like the greatest comedies are hilarious, and then suddenly out of nowhere you get sucker punched in the face, and you go, "Oh, I thought I was coming here to, you know, laugh, but now suddenly there's this whole thing. Oh, I'm laughing again," and that's great filmmaking in my estimation. So we're kind of coming up to the end of our hour now. Maureen's asked no questions whatsoever. And so that's my take on it. I guess the last thing I would leave you with, if we want to do questions, we can do, Maureen, is do it now. Like, don't wait for permission. There is nobody you need permission from. Do it now. Do it with audacity. Do it with vision and technical competence, legal competence, like, you know, make sure you get your paperwork, commercial competence. You want to make something that people see, otherwise it doesn't exist. And it's great to have fun making it, but it's got to exist. It's got to be seen by people, and enjoy the journey. You know, it's not about the destination. The destination is exciting for about 10 seconds. We all know the story of the actress who won the Oscar for best film, and then the following morning said, what's next? Like, where do I go from here? So even winning an Oscar it's a goal. It's somewhere to get to, but it is simply a stepping stone on the journey. So you got to enjoy the journey every single day, every single moment, even the shit. And there will be lots of it. Learn to love the shit. Anyway, okay, so that's me done, Maureen.
I mean, yeah, that's a masterclass and a half, isn't it? The one thing, the one thing that I would just qualify for the students is, obviously you've had a while doing this and getting to learn who you are doing it. So you know exactly who you are and where your competences lie, basically. So you're more like a director lying towards like the producing side. But I would say, coming back to self-shooting and everything, and it's not so much about like, once you have your budget or when you make up your budget, I think you just have to take that sort of look in the mirror of like, what can I do and where do I need help? That's the only thing I would just qualify is some profiles listening to this of people will be directing and really good with the camera. And then you need to learn like where do I need help, basically. What can I do? You need to identify your strength so that you hire your weaknesses, and then you're strong all around. Is that something you would?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, look, it's everything is a stepping stone. It's like, my first film was a self-shooting zombie film shot on Super 8 with my mates. I was literally the entire crew. I was doing the makeup, I was making the blood, I was burying people in the ground, I was filming them, I was positioning the lights. And then on the second film, I had some people help me with the lights and help me with the makeup. And at each step I moved forward and went, I need help doing this and this and this. I identify, as you said, your weaknesses. It's not even weaknesses sometimes, it's just availability. If I am doing this, I am not available to do that. And if I get sucked into that, then I am not doing this, which is important. So there is an inevitable growth as your ambition expands, as your cinematic desire gets broader and bigger, so you will need to attract more people. But when I train the Guerilla Filmmakers Masterclass, I do like a career plan, and I spent some time working on it, and I identified 5 specific bumps in a person's career, and most people think that it's a bit like most things in life, that people overestimate their knowledge, and it's only when you really know what you're doing that you realize how you didn't know what you were doing before. But at the beginning, most people overestimate where they're really at, and at the end, they underestimate where they're really at. So in the first year or two, it's basically just picking up a camera, shooting it, and figuring it out, and realizing you need a script. And no films, a 90-minute film can't be shot in a day. Well, it can technically, but it's not generally. You just learn all of that stuff, and in the second phase, you're really crafting and becoming really good. Like, you're understanding how to focus cameras, you're understanding about why you need to get the microphone close to people, why the script, you go from draft 1 to draft 12, whereas in the first year you're shooting draft 1, and with all of the problems that draft 1 of your script brings. And then in the third bump, you really know what you're doing. And this is what I've been describing today, is where you go, right, we're going to make a credible attempt at the summit of Mount Everest. We may fail, but we're going to go for it single-mindedly with laser vision. Everything else is cancelled. We're just doing this one thing. And that's your low-budget independent film. That's what the guys who made the Ouijas did. It's like, that's all they did. Nothing else. Absolutely nothing else. And they focused on that one thing, and it paid off for them because Amazon picked it up. So that's the stage 3. The stage 4 is when you leapfrog into the industry, and they go, great, you're amazing, you're talented. Here's an episode of Doctors to direct, which may seem like a step down, but I want to remind you that you're going to be paid to do that. And the moment you get paid to pursue the thing that you love doing is a glorious day. So then you work your way through that stage 4. Now, many people will just stay in stage 4 where they're professional, and they have kids and get a mortgage, and they're like, it's a great life, it's fine, I'll direct Holby City for 20 years. And you get those people who will do that. Other people continue to climb, and then they want to break into stage 5, which is where you become kind of like royalty, like Christopher Nolan. Like, what do you want to do, Chris? We'll fund it. We don't care what it's called or what it's about. We're in. But very few people, Quentin Tarantino, that level of person. You can argue, Patty Jenkins with Wonder Woman, and it's not. There's a lot of people in that world who are seen as A-listers. Let's use that. So you become an A-lister, and that's a harder leap to make, but it is possible. I mentioned David Yates. David Yates did go from a yoga video to Harry Potter in under 10 years. He did. He went from a small British film that cost like £3 million that nobody saw to a Harry Potter movie. And when I spoke to him about it, he said, every single day of that Harry Potter movie, I felt like I was about to be fired. And I had to work on never being fired. And that was his primary job, was not be fired, and get through to the end in such a way that people went, he's really good, let's have him for the next one. Let's have him for the next 5. you know, and there you go. Then you're an A-list career, you know, making the money, having the opportunities to choose what you do with your life. That's where we all really want to be at. But this rarefied air at the top there.
Amazing, thank you. Well, just to wrap it up, if there's no question, because I understand I haven't really allowed time for question, is there anyone who has a question? Anyone? Just unmute yourself and speak now or forever hold your peace.
Everybody's traumatized.
So one piece of advice, Chris, before I let you go, just for those guys like, you know, listening and being inspired by going to make a feature film that no one can pronounce the title for.
Yeah, I mean, look, I could give thousands of pieces of advice. Leverage your resources, like, and take action, and know you're going to get it wrong. Like, you're just going to get it wrong, and that's okay, because everybody gets it wrong. Even at the highest level, people are getting it wrong and are dissatisfied. James Cameron famously said, and he stole this, like Steele as well, you know, films are never completed, they're just abandoned. And it's totally true. You just go, I can't do any more. I'm done, or it's being released tomorrow. When I was in LA years ago, and a friend of mine who wrote the music for one of the feature films that I made, he also then ended up doing the music for Armageddon. And I went to see him while he was doing Armageddon. They were days away from the premiere. He was still doing the music. And he told me later that there was one shot of the asteroid that turned up 16 hours before the premiere. Like, that's how close they got. And, you know, it wasn't right even then. But, you know, the film's released. So you're going to get it wrong. Leverage the tech. I mean, the tech is amazing now. Extraordinary tech. Can you allow me to share screen for 1 second? I just want to show you one thing, Maureen.
Of course.
It's just a silly example, but it's a good, you know, it is a relevant example. So I got a drone the other day. I've never had a drone. And this was my second flight. Here we go. I needed to take a shot of this building. It's in HD. It's a drone that costs £200. And look at that for an establishing shot of that building. That's crazy. Now, to put that into context, just 10 years ago, that shot would have cost £10,000. Like, that shot would have cost the entire budget of a low-budget film. And you can buy one on Amazon today. Like, the tech, there is literally nothing stopping you from making a film aside from your decision to not make your film. That's it. It's the whole deal. There is no barrier to entry now, assuming you're not literally on the breadline. And if you are on the breadline, you shouldn't be thinking about making a film. You should be thinking about getting off the breadline. So take action, leverage the tech, leverage what you've got, be audacious, aim high, close high, have fun on the journey. Remember, however bad your worst day at being a filmmaker beats the best day stocking shelves at Tesco. So enjoy the journey. That's it.
Aww. Well, that sounds like an amazing time to bring this to a close. Chris Jones, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, Chris. I'm going to let you move on,
Thanks,
guys.
Chris.
You're very welcome. See you at the Oscars. Aim high. Au revoir. Bon voyage.
I'm going to stop the recording. Chris, if you want to stay on for a sec.
No.
Where do I stop? Stop recording.